everybody. My name is David Nour. I'm a senior leadership and board advisor. I'm an educator. I'm an executive coach. I'm elated to host the first Connections, the Cipla Connection series with I got to tell you, one of my favorite CEOs, Umang Vohra. Welcome. Glad you're here. Glad to be a part of this kicking off this new series.
Thank you very much, David. As usual, you're full of energy, and I'm so happy to be chatting with you.
So we want to talk today about this idea of really reimagining leadership. You and I had a really interesting conversation in not just where Cipla is, but where Cipla is going, and really this global pandemic as a springboard, as an opportunity to rethink, reimagine, reinvent parts of Cipla and really setting the organization up for enormous growth potential moving forward. Umang, talk a little about what reimagine leadership means to you, and what are you most excited about seeing the employees rise up to the occasion and really the emerging leaders show up within the Cipla culture?
I think it's very interesting. I've been introspecting a lot about what's changed in me in this pandemic. And I just have to say, David, that I think I feel the most alive in the last 6 months. There was predictability, if you would call it, to a certain way of life. There were Excel spreadsheets that could be made. There was a standard for everything. And all of a sudden, right, we've been thrust into this place where we're thinking of survival, not just of ourselves, of our families, of the world, of the company, right? And I think that's a very different skill set. It's a little bit more of the hunting skill set than a farming skill set. And that's really been the difference for me personally. And I think how that's percolated down is that we're beginning to ask and encourage people to ask questions about our business models. We're beginning to encourage people to look at COVID as an opportunity and not as a crisis. So even if we don't sell the type of medicines that we need to sell, that we used to sell for COVID before the crisis began, we're beginning to take a look at what more we can do. How many ranges of product we can offer, what are different adjacencies that suddenly become more attractive, aided by digital, that can help us get there. So it's really interesting. It's almost like re-questioning or questioning, re-questioning, imagining, reimagining everything all over again.
I love that analogy of a hunter mindset versus a farmer. Do you believe that mindset, that DNA, is nature or is it nurture? Are there people that are born with that hunting kind of ability, or is it something that's developed into them through the culture and over time?
I think it's cultivated. I think it is cultivated over a period of time. I am a strong proponent for that. I think you need to have the curiosity to hunt. You need to have the ability to take a little bit of risk. But it's cultural. It can be cultivated. And I think we're trying to do this job of trying to cultivate it. We're telling people, bring us opportunities. We're also passing another message, David. And I think that message is it's important to execute the best you could, but we're also going to be tolerant of failure, because you can't have risk-taking and failure going together. So we're making smaller bets because the path is about being alive, and you really don't know which step is a big step in the glacier, right? So you take smaller steps, you take more steps, but at the same time, you try many different things, and don't be too afraid to fail. I think that's the message we're giving.
2 data points here I'm reminded of. For those of you that are blessed to lead a team, I've often said, look at 2 axes. One is willingness. The other one is an ability. If somebody demonstrates the willingness to learn and grow, you, me, others can certainly raise their ability. But if the willingness is not there, neither you, me, or anybody else is going to be able to make a difference, right? So I'm always looking for who's willing, who's stepping up and saying, I'm willing to take that prudent risk. I'm willing to join that task force or join that initiative or volunteer for that additional work beyond what I'm doing, because it's a phenomenal learning and growth opportunity for me, right? So that's 1. 2, I love your comment about creating a culture that's unafraid of retribution, that's unafraid of failing, that's unafraid of taking prudent risk. And Umang, I think we grew up in similar environments where ever since you and I were kids, it's driven into us that failure is bad. Whereas you and I know that's the only way we learn. That's the only way we grow through the process.
Absolutely. And I'd like to agree. And, you know, David, some of the initial interactions we had, you left us with this message that don't look at it as failure, look at it as learning moments, right? And I think that's something that we brought into the company increasingly fast, that, you know, every failure is a learning moment. And we don't even call them failures anymore. We call them learning moments. There's, you know, we try to encourage people to learn from, you know, from events that didn't go off the way we thought they would. And I think that's just been beautiful because it kind of takes away the fear of failure. The other thing is we're also beginning to reward behaviors that bring us a different mindset, right? Which is a behavior where you could question why things are going to be different in the future, right? As against set into a pattern of predictability. So we're beginning to reward those. We're beginning to compliment people more spontaneously about, that's a great idea. That's a fantastic idea. Take it on, right? Pilot it. And I think a lot of that's happening. So you fail fast, but you learn a lot, right? And I think it's the learning that's more important.
Love that. And it's, again, human nature, right? We all need a yardstick. We all want that recognition. And it's amazing how often we ask for A, and we measure or reward or compensate B. And what you're doing is you're confusing your team of, wait a minute, I think you want me to lead, but that effort, that initiative is not recognized, it's not rewarded, and it doesn't have to be a financial reward. It could just be a recognition. It could be listen, great job on that. We all need that as human beings because it refills our cup and gets us excited about tackling that day and that next obstacle. That's what keeps us moving forward.
I agree. I completely agree. I think it's just about, so there's one thing, David, that keeps coming up quite occasionally, right? In our core set of businesses and processes, right? I think execution is at a premium, right? And I think the areas that more modern corporations struggle with is that you can't be tolerant of failure in a well-oiled machine. But you can be tolerant of failures when you're trying to explore a new territory, right? When you're trying to explore a new line of business, when you're trying to get a new thought, a new way of working, right? All of that is fine. But I think the challenge really becomes between the two of them, where somebody says, oh, we're tolerant of failure. So if we don't execute in our core business and if we don't execute in what's already well-oiled, it's fine. Well, it's fine up to a certain point, right? But we are more tolerant of this new hunting methodology, right? You don't want to be too much tolerant for too much of failure when you're farming, right? Because there's a pattern of predictability to it. But you can be tolerant of failure when you hunt, when you're looking for new things, new opportunities.